Hello, everyone. Hello. Today, we're resuming my beating Wizard101 only using Locomaton. We're resuming that today with Cyclops Lane. Now, it may be controversial. Some people say you have to do Triton Avenue first. I know a lot of people who are very Triton Avenue focused people, but I disagree with that philosophy. I feel like I like working my way from the top of the streets to the bottom of the street. So I do Cyclops Lane, Triton Avenue, then Firecat. That's how I do. So today we are going to be doing Cyclops Lane. Might also go into some of Triton, but probably just Cyclops Lane tonight. Also, I'm going to talk about how to build a shadow wizard in this stream, just because I feel like shadow builds are often overlooked, and they can be really fun in PvE, despite being banned in PvP. A lot of people are very PvP is all that matters. I personally don't subscribe to that particular philosophy. I like all the schools, regardless of if they're valid in PvP or not, including tertiary schools like Shadow, Sun, Moon. Haven't figured out how to play Star yet. Working on a Star playthrough. Don't know if it'll work. But I am really looking forward to... Is there something wrong with the stream? Reloading. Okay. Come on. Offline. Unstable. What's happening? What is happening here? What is happening? Hello? Looks like quality's improved a bit. So I'm gonna just continuing on. I've opened up the game. I'm just making sure I am where we want to be to start out. Verifying realm and zone and all that. So we'll be switching over to the game in just a second. And we're here in the game. Let us talk to Sergeant Muldoon and go into Cyclops Lane. A good day to Cyclops. let's get going. Explore Cyclops Lane in the Cyclops Lane. Hurry, this way we can talk safely over there. I don't care. Talk to Noel in the Storm Gate. So, a shadow build in Wizard101 refers to a playstyle in which you use shadow damage, and as such, shadow creature spells, to dispatch of most of your enemies. As a kind of needed prerequisite, you kind of have to be done with Chrysalis, or at least past the solar arc, to properly do this. Although, I have been thinking if this goes well, I might make a run that is... Can you beat Arc 1 with only Azoth? Which will be heck in a handbasket. Won't like it. Probably gonna be worse than this. But that's a thought. It might be a neat idea. Unpredictability of shadow magic until you can refine it into shadow spells. But beyond that, a shadow build, let's start with the school you probably want to pick. You probably want to pick a balance wizard. For the reason of blades. There isn't any learnable, trainable shadow blade spell. It's not a thing. And getting Balance Blade as a school spell that you can enchant and cast at base, and also Blade Storm as a base school spell, will improve your playtime wholly. Now, it doesn't need to be a Balance Wizard at base. It's just my suggestion. I myself made my shadow character on an Ice Wizard, which I regret, but it's who I made my shadow build on. When casting shadow magic, you will need 2 shadow pips to start this cycle of your hit. So, to get those 2 shadow pips, you're going to need to do a lot of buffing in the meantime. I like the format of Blade Stack, Shadow Spell, Blade, Blade, Hit. Now, not a lot of blades are valid for Shadow Wizards. So, when considering the gear you use, having a wide array of stackable blades is a must. This is my personal suggestion of the gear you should use for the hat, robe, and boots. For the hat, you're going to want the Battle Mage Helm from the Battle Mage Keep bundle. The Battle Mage Helm, the hat, has a unique spell card called Justice Blade, which is a plus 35% Universal Blade and a plus 35% Shadow Blade. While most people would overlook this spell, as a Shadow Wizard, Justice Blade is your crux. It is a plus 70% blade, effectively, for the cost of 1 pip. Next, for your robe I haven't seen any robes that have a good blade and good stats. So for your robe, you're going to want either the Lightkeeper's dive suit from the Lightkeeper's bundle that just released a while ago, or you're going to want, if you want to go the blade route instead, there is a shirt that gives Blade Storm from the Islanders Elemental pack. I forget what the name of that is, because that's not personally the route I went myself, but that is a route you could go if you wanted item card blade, instead of plus 30 to your damage. And then for your boots, this might be a bit controversial, but you're gonna want the blue, I think it's the blue Snowdrifter shoes. Why you want the blue Snowdrifter shoes is because they give a spell called Chromatic Burst. Or maybe Chromatic Blast. What Chromatic Blast is an X-Pip blade that gives 5% per pip. This is a balance spell. As a balance, you'll have power pips that will apply to it. And that will be a great help to you. At max pips, max power pips, it will give you a 35% blade. And that's the gear for the hat, robe, and shoes you'll want. For your deck, anything with a triangle socket's good. Ideally, it would be a universal deck, not one that has more for specific school spells, simply for the reason of universal deck will probably let you have more shadow spells in it than a school-specific deck will. So, you're going to want a deck with a triangle socket. I'll get to why you want that triangle socket in a minute. Then, for your ring, I would personally use the Aphrodite damage ring. Aphrodite is a stone key boss in Darkmoor. At the end of Darkmoor in the graveyard, Aphrodite is a stone key boss. First room, you don't need to fight any of the actual bosses in the dungeon to get it. And the Aphrodite can drop three potential rings. A Universal School Energy Ring, a Your Specific School Energy Ring, and a Your Specific School Damage Ring. I would go after that damage ring. It will give you the most universal damage, and will likely give you some good pierce, and also some just good all-around stats. If you don't have stone keys, or are run out and are unable to farm, there's a bit of bizarre gear for a caramel ring that I would use that gives 15% damage. It's not as good as the Aphrodite damage ring, but it will carry you until you can get that Aphrodite damage ring. I know this because I used it while I was farming Aphrodite. For your Atem, I would go with the Darkmoor Atem for your school, because likely that will have the highest universal damage you can get. You're going to want to make sure it also has a triangle socket, because you're going to want 2 items with a triangle socket. For the amulet, if you are not a balance wizard, I would advise the Lufulum's Valiant Pendant, I think it is. It's one of the 2 potential Balance Mastery Amulet drops from Omen's Theatrbog, which is a Stone Key boss in Polaris. because that particular Balance Mastery amulet will give you Dragon Blade as a card you can cast. Dragon Blade, again, is a very good card, as it's a blade that you can add to your mix and stack. However, there are other amulets that give Balance Blade. I choose this one for non-balance wizards because it gives Balance Mastery, which will feed into how powerful your Chromatic Surge will be, and other stats. For the wizard who is balanced, though, I haven't found the perfect amulet yet, but you can find plenty of amulets that will give you Dragon Blade. I'm fairly certain. Get an amulet that gives you Dragon Blade, and that will carry you, get you the same blade the amulet for a non-balance would. Potentially you can find a better amulet. Haven't actually run a balanced Shadow School yet, so we'll see how that does. Now, the reason I wanted you to get those 2 triangle sockets is because of 2 gems you will need for the run. These are kind of crucial in the build because they are blades that will stack with all your other blades. The first thing, you're going to want a dual Shadow Blade Hematite. Dual Shadow Blade Hematites can be dropped from all manner of bosses, mostly in Polaris, but they can also drop from a Celestia boss called Mahone Stargazer, or Star Searcher. Mahone, I personally fought a lot to get the dual Shadow Blade Hematite and also a dual Balance Blade Citrine. These 2 blades will go in your triangle sockets and will stack. Hello, chatter, Wi-Fi Online. Welcome to the stream. I have just been describing how to build a shadow character. While we beat Cyclops Lane with purely the Locomaton. And yes, it is Locomaton. That is an A, not an O. I don't know why. So... where was I? Need to grab my train of thought. Right. You will likely have to farm Mahone, or there are a couple other bosses in Polaris that drop these dual blade jewels. And dual blade jewels are great for a lot of people when I think about it, because they give an item blade, and item blades usually stack with trained blades. So, farm Mahone. He needs to get more people farming him. He also drops teleporters for you housing enthusiasts. Fun fact. So once you have your 2 jewels socketed in your deck and your item, you have your amulet, you have your ring, you have your gear. I'm gonna go into your deck setup before I go into your pet, because pets are gonna take a while. Mainly because pets always do. Your deck setup will likely be the blades you have available. You only need 1 of each copy available to you. Then in your deck itself, I would suggest 2 reshuffles and 2 copies of Dark Shepherd. Why am I saying Dark Shepherd instead of Nova or Fiend? Because Dark Shepherd has comparably decent damage to Fiend and heals yourself, which is a big factor when you're dealing with backlash as a Shadow Wizard. So Dark Shepherd will keep you topped off and will also keep you alive. It's a great option for Shadow Wizards. So beyond having your Dark Shepherd, you also need 2 reshuffles, because sometimes you're not going to beat the boss. That's rare, but sometimes you won't. Now, we're going to go into the pet. The pet I have found is best for a Shadow Wizard is the Feathered Tabby, which you can get from King Detrius in the Drains. I also agree. I do hope there is more Shadow Wizard support in the future. Thank you, Chatter to Wi-Fi Online. So there is... The best pet is the Feathered Tabby, for the following reason. It gives the spell Dragonlance, which is not only a plus 35% blade, universal like Dragon Blade is. Did not mean to accept that quest. Right, yikes. Why am I here? Why did I go in here? Oh, I was ahead in the quest in my brain. I don't care. We need to go to Victor Darkwood in Wizard City Robe Shop. And as for talents on your pet, you're going to want, namely, what I've found are good options for talents, is you're going to want both Universal Pierce talents, both Universal Damage talents, and because you can't get a Quint Damage pet for Shadow, because there are no Shadow Damage talents, but you can get Pierce and you can get Damage. So from those Universal talents, Painbringer, Paingiver, and Armor Breaker, Armor Piercer. Those 4 talents are great. And you can get them from the pet itself, from hashing for a while, or you can get them from a jewel. However you do it is up to you. After you have those talents, you have 1 or 2 slots for a talent left, which, if you don't want to play around a bit, you can sock it in Mighty as a talent to boost your strength up, because both of those talents rely on strength. Or, 2 other talents I have found incredibly helpful is Reinforce and Pet 20% Balance Blade. There's a 20% version of Balance Blade that a pet can give, which will stack with your dual Balance Blade, and will stack with your base Balance Blade if you're a Balance Wizard. Reinforce is great because something you may have noticed about the gear set I described is Resist is basically non-existent in this gear set. You have practically none of it. And Reinforce is kind of like Berserk. It tanks your defensive capabilities at the benefit of plus 40% outgoing damage. The difference between Reinforce and Berserk is while Berserk increases your incoming damage by 30%, Reinforce reduces your base resist stat by a percentage. Since you have basically no base resist, you will instead have much less of a drawback when casting Reinforce. The pet I hatched for my Shadow Wizard had the following base talents: Pain Giver, Armor Breaker, Armor Piercer, Reinforce, Might, and then on the Jewel, I got the Kroger Jewel, the Mortal Toil Onyx, which gave the missing Pain stat and also may cast Mass Feint. However, alternatively, you can go for the Painbringer, Paingiver, and Jewel. You can mix and match those talents however you want. That was how I did it. Might not have been the best way to do it, but it's the way I chose to make my pet. Now, that's the general build for a Shadow Wizard that I've discovered from optimizing playing Shadow Magic. A lot of people might look at that build. Oh, haven't discussed the wand yet. For the wand, I would suggest the brain just went blank. I would suggest, I think it's the Hierarch Supreme staff from Lemuria. It's one of the universal staffs from Lemuria. Gives 19 shadow rating, 18 damage, and good pierce. It's great for a Shadow Wizard if you're just looking at stats, and it also gives a Shadow Wand hit, which is nice. Alternatively, another great method I have found works, especially if you have that Mortal Toil Onyx like I do, is using the Edge of Shadow you get from Chrysalis. Stats-wise, it's garbage, but the wand spell it gives is a 15% hex, which has a boosted make can. Something you may not know about Shadowforged weapons is they all boost May casts slightly that trigger off their spells. So I have found when using Shadow's Edge, when I cast that 15% blade on someone, I fairly reliably get the May cast Mass Feint to proc on it. Another option you can choose, a third option you can choose, if you don't like either of those options, is the Lightkeeper's Angler. Not my favorite, although I have used it occasionally. It offers, depending on your school, a Mass Blade, a Mass Trap, or a both of universal damage. You can use this to boost the damage of your Mass as an extra blade for an extra turn. It's a good spell. I like it. It's helpful, but something you need to remember if you're using the trap version of the spell, if you're a school that uses the trap version of the spell is coded in the game as a blade. As such, for cheating bosses, it will not trigger cheats that rely on traps, or May casts that will rely on traps. It also won't trigger, but it will trigger blade cheats, and blade May casts. So keep that in mind if you're using Lightkeeper's Angler's Lightkeeper's Beam. Keep that in mind. So that's Shadow Magic. Something people may criticize me for, or point out at me for being under-optimized, is the gear I have picked does not have good shadow rating. It doesn't have optimized shadow rating, so as such, you're not going to cast your spells as quickly. Now, I want to add something. A single point of shadow rating doesn't speed up getting 2 shadow pips as much as it might think. Essentially, how increasing your shadow rating would help is increase the chance you get more of a boost every turn to that little bar at the bottom of your screen. So shadow rating isn't actually the biggest priority for me, because you'd be sacrificing damage, pierce, and blades just to go a bit faster. And it's also not a guarantee you go faster whatsoever. It's just a chance you go faster. So, take that as you will. Shadow rating, while theoretically would be a great stat for a Shadow Wizard, isn't the best choice. Although, where you can get it, I would advise getting it. But if you have the choice between a blade or more shadow rating, or more damage or more shadow rating, I would put shadow rating on the sideline most of the time. And that's how being a Shadow Wizard, that's my Shadow Wizard build. That's how I play Shadow Wizards, that's how I build them. As for playing a Shadow Wizard, it's a long process. Longer than doing battles with a Locomaton. Because you need to spend as much time, you need to wait for 2 shadow pips, and then once you get your 2 shadow pips, you need to wait 2 more turns to be able to cast, to be able for your shadow creature spell to actually hit. Keep in mind, when playing this way, you want to keep 2 of your blades for after you've cast your shadow creature spell. Because Dark Shepherd, Dark Nova, and Dark Fiend all like blades. And when you cast a liked spell, they will buff you even more. They will make the hit stronger. And the backlash reduce. So that's a whole thing you need to account for. If you don't have enough blades, save 2 of them for the likes. Otherwise, you might kill yourself with the backlash, which is never good. Something you need to keep in mind about this build is, while it's fun, it's shadow-themed, it could be enjoyable to play, it's really only viable in standardized PvE. Any part of the game that uses the advanced combat system, also known as PvP rules, will not allow this. A lot of the spells you use are rated no PvP, and that means you won't be able to do much in a PvP setting. That's Shadow build. Now let me think of something else I can talk about while I complete Cyclops Lane. Let's discuss how Wizard City has changed over the years. Because it's changed a lot. I've been playing this game since launch, although I regret to say I haven't played Wizard City 10,000 times. So, my memory of the original story of the different streets is, albeit, a bit hazy. I remember that this whole rescue students from bubbles in the Cyclops Lane thing wasn't a thing whatsoever. It is a new bit. I can't say it's a bit I particularly like. Also, the Cyclopses being under the thrall of a dark enchantment or bubble, little bunny guy wasn't a thing either. Not a thing. Doesn't properly. Wasn't in the old game. In the old game, you were sent to Cyclops Lane because the Cyclopses kidnapped some students. Nolan was just as useless, and so was Cyrus. However, these characters here, Rosie Ironheart, Garrick Goldenhawk, and Electra Stormcloud, were more or less nothing more than MacGuffins that were at the end of the street. Go rescue them. So, that was the original plot. I'd say Cyclops Lane has seen the least changes in its story. Generally, you still hit most of the same story beats. It's just... it's different. And not necessarily in the best way it could have been. The street that, in my personal opinion, saw the most changes, and the story is the most different from, is, I'd say, actually, Firecat Alley. A lot of people criticize, how Triton Avenue has had who's been captured and who's helping switched. And while I agree, original Triton Avenue was better, I think that new Firecat Alley is worse. In original Firecat Alley, it wasn't the Fire Elves... Well, the Fire Elves were driven crazy by a Banshee, but it wasn't some contrived stage actor drama. It was a genuine threat from Malistaire. In addition to that, there was this sort of very strong bit of lore that I really liked, where the guard on that street, who plays little to no role in the new Cyclops, not in the new Firecat Alley, the guard in that street was deeply concerned for the Fire Elves. It wasn't just people thinking, the Fire Elves have gone crazy, oh no. It was because the guard saved one of the Fire Elves' lives at one point, and they had a life bond to each other. So, that was a very strong story. I felt it was very compelling, and you were saving people that the guards actually cared about. Whereas in new Firecat Alley, it's much more comedic, a lot less of a strong story, and also the weird fire for fiddle is garbage. I hate it. Also, I liked original Fire Elves models more than I like the new ones, because the new ones have weird, creepy smiles that I hate. Absolutely hate. As for Triton Avenue, the story, out of all the streets, I would say Triton Avenue's story has remained the most intact. The only major change is the two Gryffindor siblings being switched. Originally, it was Susie who was on the outside trying to save her brother, instead of her brother Arthur trying to save Susie. Which, I can understand why people don't like that change. I personally don't like it either. But it was what King's Isle decided to change. Don't know, and honestly, don't much care. Another big change about Wizard City. Well, not really a change, I guess, if you look at original concept art, but a shift was the addition of the catacombs and the drains. Personally, I find it very odd that Wizard City has this much underground space. It is implausible and a bit not sane. Wizard City has the haunted caves, the haunted cave, the dark cave, night side, the sunken city, and now it also has the drains and the druid stuff. Seems kind of implausible that Wizard City has that much to it. It's like it keeps getting deeper, and I don't know how I feel about it. Like, for one thing, Wizard City feels hollow as it is already, with the night side being as big as it is, and the caves being as big as they are depicted being. But, on the other hand, I feel like the drains kind of make sense. Like, I don't see any sewer grates anywhere in Wizard City. To be honest, I don't know where the drains are getting all their garbage influx from. Like, people say it's all inside the houses. I'm like, okay, I guess that makes sense. Kind of. But, on the other hand, like, it's Wizard City. Wouldn't they, like, have magical waste dispelling powers? Would they need a complicated sanitary system manned by an army of bug people? I don't think they would. Don't think they needed that. But I have different feelings on the catacombs as opposed to the drains. The catacombs reveal the druidic sort of nature of Wizard City and what it was long time ago. And I really feel like we should have more of those druidic relics on the surface of Wizard City. Because Bartleby was a center of worship for a whole bunch of people. And it's sort of like Merle Ambrose just showed up one day and built a city there where this ancient people once lived. I don't know how... Like, I can't see a natural evolution from the druidic society of the catacombs to what Wizard City is today. And a lot of people say, like, Wizard City's always been Wizard City and the catacombs are kind of separate. But I don't think that would be the case either. I feel like the city was built on top of this ancient druidic people. And I can actually show what I believe to be a bit of proof for that in a moment. After this fight, I'll pull up the credits tab. A tab a lot of people probably have never seen. Yes, Wizard101 does have a credits tab. And in that credits tab, you can see some art for Wizard City that has been there for a long time. And I just sort of want to show you what the Wizard City of the Bartleby tree looked like in that image. It's going to show a much more druidic, nature-y place, instead of this modern sort of city area we've got today. Credits. See this? This picture here. It shows a sort of Stonehenge around Bartleby. This feels more like what the city of the Druids might look like. Whereas with modern Wizard City, we've got a school around it instead of like places of worship. And the city is a lot bigger, a lot more densely populated. I genuinely feel like if Wizard City and the school around it and the city around it are a natural evolution of that original druidic society that inhabited Wizard City, I feel like there should be more evidence for that. More of the druidic spirals around the city. More Stonehenges and such. And, like, Merle Ambrose is from Avalon. A place where druids would likely also be very common. I feel strongly that there's a sort of disconnect between that in-lore ancient Wizard City and the Wizard City we see today. And also, Wizard City likely wasn't always called Wizard City. I want to know, when did Wizard City get that name? Like, when it was a place where the Great Tree was, and, like, it's got to have some other name to it. It might just be called Ravenwood, and then the Ravenwood School of Magic was built on top of it, and then a city arose around it. Does the world of Wizard City have another name? What is that other name? What is that ancient name? I want to know. I gotta know. What did the Druidic people call this land before Wizard City rose up on top of it? It's a mystery that has eluded me, and I would really like an answer to. Another thing about Wizard101 lore is, how does the world of Pirate 101 fit in with the world of Wizard 101? They kind of feel distinct and separate, yet also they're the same world setting. And I personally have a strong theory that I can back up with evidence on the Wizards 101 Pirate 101 disconnect. So in this disconnect, I feel that Pirate 101 takes place many years after the main story of Wizard 101. Something of an inciting incident in the lore of Pirate 101 is Napoleon's conquest of the Spiral, and how it threatened the then ruling peoples of the Spiral, Valencia, Marleybone, and Monquista. And how those people joined together and created the Armada to stop Napoleon's conquest. During the events of Pirate 101, Napoleon has been imprisoned for some time. He is solidly in prison. He is not a ruling force. There hasn't been a revolution in Polaris. Or there has been. Napoleon was locked up. Stuff like that happened. Yet in Wizard 101, penguins aren't the ruling force of Polaris. Walruses are. And it's not called Penguinonia, which is what it's called in in Pirate 101. It's called Walrusburg. So, my theory is, by helping the penguin with their revolution, the revolution takes place. Kinda like it does in the real world in France. Revolution takes place, A lot of people die. And in the end, Napoleon takes power. And even in Novus, who the leader of Polaris is kind of up in the air. So I don't think Napoleon has yet quite taken root in Polaris. So, as such, by an extension of that, since the inciting incident of the entire story of Pirate 101, since the creation of the Armada is derived from the threat Napoleon posed to peace in the Spiral, then it would make sense that a world before his rise to power, Wizard101, would take place earlier in the timeline than Pirate 101, a world after his fall. And another evidence I have to this connection is Napoleon's rise to power was greatly aided and assisted by the Wizard. And what is one of the Armada's biggest rules? The practice of magic is illegal. In a world where the practice of magic is illegal, how would tournaments that are known the world over, like this Spiral Cup tournament, ever take place? Right? How could a school of magic and wizards, how could 3 known schools of magic and wizards exist when essentially the world government has outlawed magic? And I believe the reason the world government has outlawed magic and hoodoo has risen up in its wake is because a lot of people blame the Wizard, and by extent Wizard City, for the rise of Napoleon and the threat that he posed to the Spiral. So, and even further proof I have to my point is in the rework of the opening of Pirate 101. Pirate 101 received an opening rework far earlier than Wizard 101 did. You go to an area that kind of resembles Azteca. There are Aztecasaurs there. And the Aztecasaurs that are there have something kind of revealing to say. The Aztecasaurs that are there say their world was already destroyed by Morganth and a meddling wizard. And they have fled the destruction of their world to have peace here in Skull Island. Which would lead me to believe that the Morganth saga also takes place before. The Aztecasaurs have very clearly been in Skull Island for quite some time. And I do think it's very possible that these Aztecasaurs fled Azteca when Xibalba crashed, due to the actions of Morganth and the Wizard. So that's my theory on how Pirate and Wizard 101 are connected. I think it's a very strong theory. Another evidence that kind of works in for this theory is the only time we ever interact with the direct cast of Pirate 101 in Wizard 101 is during the 5 Boxes event, where we meet Boochbeard and Ganymede on their way to free the pirate from the Armada at the opening of Pirate 101, which couldn't happen at the same time as Wizard 101 because of the reason that why would it be in 5 boxes if it didn't involve traveling through time? Right? likely that particular event is a travel into the future to mess things up. It's my theory. I feel like it's a strong theory. I feel like it really works, but whether or not you agree with me is up to you, and in the end, it's just my speculation on the topic. If you have evidence that counters my suggestion, feel free to chat about it in the chat or comment it in the comment section when this becomes a YouTube video. Let's see. What else is there to talk about? We're nearing the end of Cyclops Lane, so I don't need to talk about much more. There's this sort of hidden gem of a quest line I found in Wizard101 that actually starts here in Cyclops Lane that I'm going to refer to. I don't know if this quest line has a name, but I'm going to refer to it as the Then Fair quest line. If you are, once you finish the Cyclops Lane main story, one of the three wizards that is standing in the sort of pavilion area of Cyclops Lane is saying, well, we're gonna put on a Then Fair. Because I guess they can't say Ren Fair? Renaissance Fair? I don't know. Well, I guess the Renaissance isn't a thing in Wizard101, so it makes sense that it's not a Ren Fair. But they're putting on a Then Fair. But they need all... But since Monastery Unleash the Undead and these Cyclopses and Minotaurs and Trolls are being interfering with things, the Then Fair was cancelled. But since we solved the problem, the Then Fair could go back on, and they need you to go talk to the merchants to get the Then Fair back on. And each merchant has a small little task you have to do to convince them to rejoin the Then Fair. Which I feel is fun. But the real thick of this hidden gem of a quest line comes into play when you go to the ring vendor, and the ring vendor says, oh, well, I would help you, but I've gotten 5 rings of mine stolen by these scheming undead, and I need you to help me with that. So, it's a fun little quest line. You go fight the spirits of small natural disasters and the fear people have over those small natural disasters until you finally defeat them. You stop the rings from being used to summon the Destroyer, and eventually all's good and the Ren Fair will be put back on soon. Actually, I think it's Electra Stormcloud who gives the quests. As you can see, before the Cyclopses went mad, there was going to be a Then Fair. You know, everyone in fancy dress pretending to live in the past. That's what these tents were for, but I guess they barely started setting up before everything went off the rails. The Then Fair is one of my all-time favorite events of the year. Can you convince the merchants in the shopping district it's safe to return? So each of these people has a short go talk to someone or find a crate or something to do, and then the ring guy sends you to 5 different streets, fight 5 different undead, get the rings back. And that's a fun little quest line you can follow if you want to. And I'd say it's something of a hidden gem. They do say the Venfair will be put on, so I wonder if enough people do that quest line and ask, hey, is the Venfair ever coming? Wizard101 might add a Venfair event to the game. I'd appreciate it, but I don't know if they'll actually do it. On that note, we have completed Cyclops Lane using only our Locomaton. We've learned a new spell, Spirit Shield, cool. So, I will leave you with a picture of the coward herself and Sergeant Muldoon. I hope you enjoyed the stream and potentially video, everyone. It was a blast to talk about my shadow build and how things have changed and the Venfair and whatever else we talked about. It was fun. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had a lot of fun. And that is all for today. Bye-bye!